Welcome to the stream. Today we're talking about indie Ingenuity on our Devology Livecast. My name is Tim Russell. I'm with Rick Davidson, and we're going to go through some games we found that I think represent indie Ingenuity, and then we're going to talk about kind of how to apply some of those concepts to your games, and then we're going to take some questions at the end. And it's going to be fun, and it's going to be exciting, and I'm ready to jump into it. Rick, did you want to show your...
Full disclosure, I realized after picking my game and going back and having a look at it and making sure I understood it again, it's more indie innovation than indie ingenuity. So I might need to go do a dictionary definition lookup of what those two words mean. But should we debate those two words for the next half an hour? Could that be an interesting way to start our conversation?
I think we can just kind of take whatever we think ingenuity means. I think we can go with that.
Let's see the handful of people that are here early already. Do you want to see what Tim has got to show first or what Rick has got to show first? Maybe the first person to answer will determine which way we go. To say Tim or Rick.
Okay, let's see.
Don't say it both.
Let's see what chat has to say.
We'll see which wise guy or wise gal is going to be first to say something. Both or none. We'll see if any of those come up. But we've got a delay.
I want to see Draggy Dog.
Oh, Draggy Dog.
They said doesn't matter. Shadow.
Doesn't matter. I'm studying while listening, which to me says I don't care. I'm not going to look at either of these two things. So you guys do whatever you want.
Oh, Dave.
Oh, you know
why you got to do this to me?
This was secretly a test to see who is my favorite. Lottie was fine. Like, or maybe Lottie's saying, let's just get the bad one over and done with. It's like when you eat your vegetables first before you get to eat the good stuff. So.
All right, I'm pulling mine up right now.
Rick, tell a joke. I think I did just tell a joke. Maybe. It just seems to always...
I was expecting to make Rick go first, so I need...
Oh, okay. Well, dude, I've got mine queued up and ready. I'm, don't want to talk about professionalism here, but mine's ready to go.
Oh, well, look at you. I'm ready to go too. I just got to change resolution real quick.
Yeah. And ingenuity, while you're doing that, I want to talk about one thing that I think is ingenuity. Anytime I see an indie game where they're reusing their enemies, what I mean by that is you create one model or asset or mesh, and then you set things.
Uh-oh, did we lose him? Rick! Dun 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 dun. Dun dun dun. Okay, if you don't get that joke, you're from a different era. We lost Rick. Okay, so I guess I'll start up my game. Rick is good at telling jokes when he can talk and he doesn't get removed from the internet. Maybe he got hacked. First hiccup of the day. Are you implying we're going to have more hiccups of the day? Are you implying that we're not good at technology? Is that what you're saying? No. Us? No. What are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about. He's gone. We're just going to keep his face there, though. Oh, man, it got removed. I was just going to keep his frozen face there. Okay. Now we got his screen. Rick, your screen joined. Wait, there you go. Oh. Boom. Welcome back.
I lost my internet. I was off to the modem to see what was going on. Did I miss anything? Islanders.
Islanders. This is the game. It was funny because we had some premonition forewarning of your mic going a little weird.
Oh, help me.
Okay, so this game is called Islanders. You probably recognize it. It's made by Grizzly Games. One of Grizzly Games is our very own Jonas Tyroller, a lovely, wonderful YouTuber that makes fantastic videos, and I highly recommend you check out his channel. So this game came out, and this game looks absolutely amazing. So I'm just going to kind of dive in and show you the core gameplay, and we're going to talk about how it's ingenuitive and kind of some of the things that they did to make it super awesome. And I'm going to talk about some of the things that I love about it. So first of all, this game is absolutely beautiful. Like no matter there's all kinds of different like layouts and islands and stuff like that, and this game is absolutely beautiful. But the second thing they did that was really cool is you got some sort of these cards, right? You've got these cards of these different buildings, and you can kind of place them anywhere. And different buildings get different bonuses based on different things. I'm actually going to start a new game because I think I might have messed something up with the way that it's set up, because it wasn't showing any of the stuff. But the transitions are awesome too. First of all, like super cool. One of the things I think this game did that was really ingenuitive is they made a super beautiful, simple game, and they combined it. They combined a card game with a sort of city builder, which is like an innovation on itself, right? And Rick, you're talking about innovation versus ingenuity and all that stuff, but you know, we can use them similarly. So, game's gonna ask me to pick a pack, and these are packs of buildings. I'm gonna explain the game first, and then we'll get into why it's ingenuitive and all this stuff. And then once I've got these different buildings, it tells me the score that these buildings give me based on what they're close to. So this gets a bonus for other nearby buildings, the mill, the statue, plateau, the resort oasis, and so on. And then we've got a mill. So if we place a mill here, and it tells you the points that you'll get by placing it in that location. All right, so we can get a 13 if we place it here. So let's do that. And now we've got this field that gets a bonus for each nearby mill. So that was probably a really bad placement because now I can't get the bonus for the mill. I placed it in the one spot that was bad. I can place that there. Sure. Place that there. And then you basically get points, and then you can buy additional packs. It gives you a choice. Let's pick a lumber pack for sure. And this gets a bonus for each sawmill, statue, tree, lumberjack, warehouse, statue. But then this one gets a minus for a sawmill in a range, right? That's interesting. So sawmills don't like other sawmills. Let's put it near trees. And then, ooh, look at this. Let's grab that 21. Let's grab a +8 and +8. So the game is really, really easy to pick up and really easy to learn, first of all, right? So it's beautiful, it's inviting, and then it's super simple to pick up, which is really cool. The other thing that I really liked is nothing about this game is the game's all about optimizing, right? So you've got two unique mechanics, but you've also got this kind of optimization, which I believe is actually built into the human psyche. I think there's something about humans that just, we love to make optimal choices. I think life is so, shades of gray that when we can say, oh, 6 is better than 5, it's like, it makes us feel clever and smart. And so it's just relaxing. It's like, how high can I go in the score?
Can you zoom in a little bit, Tim, on the world?
Sure.
Yeah, just to get a bit more.
I can move around too, if that would help. I can rotate.
Do we get in the way if we do?
Getting really good.
Sort of. I'll keep an eye on that.
Yeah. Is there anything that stands out to you looking at this, Rick? Like as I'm playing it?
Well, so I mean, our theme being indie ingenuity. I'm trying. It's an interesting thing. I'm trying to delineate ingenuity from just good practices or good design. So when I look at this, I see nice looking art, not complex but nice. So is that ingenious? Side note: what's the verb of ingenuity? Is it ingenious? Is it anyway? So is it? Or is it just well done? But is that ingenuity? Is ingenuity saying I'm just going to focus on something and make it look nice and make it be presentable and logical? So yeah, it's interesting. I like this game as well, playing it just from the point of view of there's a peacefulness to it. There's a relaxation component. A lot of city builder type games are like that, whereas some get a little bit frustrating when you're trying to min-max things or figure it all out. So yeah, just reading the chat here in terms of what's going on. Sorry about me disappearing a moment ago. I was like, internet, thank you. But Tim, what would you say is the part of this where you're looking at it saying, whoa, that was a clever way of doing it. That was something that they really put some thought into this, as opposed to just saying, they're really amazing or talented, but like ingenious from this regard.
So I've tried to build a city builder, and immediately one of the things I noticed trying to build a city builder was that if you're trying to make a strategy sort of game with city builders, when you have access to a certain amount of buildings, you end up with what's called like a perfect build order, right? So in theory, there is a thing that if you build in this order, you will do ideal in most ways. Like unless you add other constraints like battles or resource collection or that kind of stuff too. And I've never been a fan of any kind of strategy game that has a solvable, winnable solution. So one of the things this games did to solve that problem was they added this card system, right? So it's not, you don't build the sawmill and then you get wood and now you have enough wood to build the next thing like most city builders work with resources. You get
Yep.
these cards and you get random packs of cards, and then you have to place these buildings in a specific spot, and you're not necessarily trying to place the building in the like some people like to just play it in creative mode, which is cool.
Yep.
But you're trying to optimize kind of the placement of that building versus optimize which buildings you're making, if that makes
Right.
sense.
Is there
So
a
that's a
reason you place
huge
all your farms
innovation to
crooked?
me.
Like, did you place your farms crooked just to hurt my OCD? Like, they're all kind of not quite lined
I
up
did
neatly.
just for you, Rick. Here, I'll make
Oh,
this one
it's too
perfectly
late now.
straight.
No, it's too late. They're all like,
I'm going to place this one straight, but I'm going to get less points to do it.
ah, uh,
Is it
yeah.
stressing
So
people out?
what I do see the ingenuity in that. It's saying, um, here's a game like maybe they built it that way, maybe they built it the other way around. Let's make a city builder, and then it's kind of like here's the formula. The formula to win is put down a farm, put down a windmill, put down a whatever. I don't know. Wait for your resources to go up, put down a do. So I think there's ingenuity in this approach, which says we're going to give you the cards in a certain order, and it looks like once you've done the order, that's it. You don't get any more cards, or this is the end of the level, and you've won or not won, or you
So
buy more cards.
you can
It's
keep hitting plus as long as you don't get below a score threshold. You can keep hitting plus and keep adding to your building. But here's another innovation that I think they did, which is really cool. You can play on this island as long as you want. And then when you want to go to the next island, you can just click a button.
Mm,
And once you fill up your score, you can go to the next island, which is super cool. Now, normally in any kind of city builders, it's all about expansion, and it's about your investment in that space. And
yeah,
so the longer you work in that space, the more you kind of want to build it out. But those city builders all have an inherent problem, which is at some point it gets really hard to manage, right? So bigger games, 4X games like, Stellaris or all this stuff, how they kind of deal with that is once your thing gets too big, they start giving you these management techniques, or these management kind of like pieces of software or whatever to like help you manage your empire, which is one way to deal with it. But Islanders kind of takes a different approach, and they're just like, you know what? What if you just left it? Like, oh, you know what? I still got a building. I still got all this. I didn't even fill my score. But what if I just
yeah.
went away
So
and started again?
there's a lot of questions in there that says, what would players prefer to do? What would be interesting and enjoyable rather than saying, I am the game. I'm going to mandate that you get
Right.
to a certain point and then you win and then you get to go to the next one. And we've got to make sure that some people win, some people lose. There's challenge. To look at it the other way around, which is what is joy in this game? And let's just give people that. Let's give people the opportunity to say, cool, I've done what I wanted to do on this level. I want to see a new one. Boop, off you go to the next one without there being consequences of, well,
Right.
but you lose or you have to save and come back or you lose your progress. So I
Right.
think that's the moral of that story is do things that you know players are going to appreciate and enjoy, and through the player feedback process, you're prototyping and doing play testing. When you play test, you see what people like and you see what they get frustrated with. So, yeah, I like it. It feels like there's a lot of that in this game.
Yeah. The other thing too, besides just paying attention to players, is they also they understood the vibe of their game, right?
Hmm.
And so they understood that you don't play this game to be hardcore and competitive, right? You play this
Yeah,
game to kind of relax and chill
to
out.
chill out. Yeah, and to build something, to have that
Right.
progression. Yeah.
And so you don't necessarily want the stress of managing the entire empire at your fingertips. When that space gets too overwhelming, you just kind of leave it
Mm.
behind and start with a new fresh clean slate, right? That feels
You
really cool. It felt weird to me
Yeah.
at first. As a designer, I
Mhm.
looked at it and I was like, that's I kind of would have kept building on or added a new island to my like little empire, right? Because that feels like growth. But I've really come to appreciate the design and kind of leaving it behind.
You know what? There is a lot of joy. A lot of games, the joy is in getting started. It's like, oh, what's the layout of the land and what characters do I get? And I'm going to start to build myself up, particularly city builders. And then after a while, you get into that mid to late game flow of I'm just sort of doing more of the same. I've already built my structure. I've already solved the problems of, how's it going to go? There's a little bit of that fun, open a deck of playing cards, not a deck of playing cards, but what is it? What would you call a pack of, your Pokemon cards or your baseball cards where you
A
open it
trading
up?
card game.
Trading cards, yeah. So opening up a new pack of trading cards and seeing what you get, there's a lot of joy in that moment. And so there's the joy of getting that new thing, and it looks like this is all procedurally generated. What's the new thing?
Yeah.
What's my circumstance? What's my challenge? And how am I going to play it at the start? But not forcing people to then grind for the next 6 hours to kind of arbitrarily get their empire from 1,000 villages to 10,000 villages.
Right. And you know what's interesting is like the win condition is kind of the same as the lose condition. You just go to a new island. That's kind of like the thing you do, and I think it takes all the pressure and all the stress off of it. And there's definitely, I really haven't I didn't realize this till in the last few years, but most of my life I've enjoyed really hardcore strategy games, like really intense, like crazy strategy games. And over the last few years I've started to really enjoy some of the lighter, more casual games. Started to enjoy
Mm,
auto battlers and like like really light games. And I think that there's a huge market for this because there's a lot of people that go to work all day and they're stressed out and they've got a ton on their mind, and they want something to just kind of escape in for a few minutes, but they want the emotional feeling of safety and well-being and calmness, not
yeah,
necessarily hardcore strategy and empire management. And there's definitely different people for different things, right? But like this
yeah.
game really kind of resonated with me from that perspective of,
And
it's
I
a chill
think the
out
point you're
game.
making before, there's a harmony between all the pieces. It's really important that all the pieces of your game feel like they belong together. So if you're making a peaceful, tranquil game, then having the visuals peaceful and tranquil, which these are, having the cards down the bottom nice and peaceful and tranquil, or whatever the words are that you're going for. And even when you click the thing down and to say, okay, what about if there's barbarians that come and raid your village? Well, that doesn't make sense. That's not really peaceful and tranquil. So that doesn't fit with our game. And the more you have that vision or that core experience, the easier it is for you to make decisions and not have things creep in that don't really feel like they belong. Which
Yeah.
I don't think is as big a problem. The creeping things that don't belong. The bigger problem is sitting there and saying, what should my art look like? Or, how big are the buildings? Or should I allow the player to have 10 of these or one of these? Those decisions are really difficult as a game designer. But when you have that core experience you're trying to hit, then you have a really easy way of saying yes to things and no to things and how should
Yeah.
I to things.
Yeah, I 100% agree. One of the other things too that's not it's not specifically innovative in itself, but it's a really good design technique that they pulled off here is there's kind of two ways to play this game. Like one is I can hover over this building type and I can look at what it gets a bonus for. So I can say, oh, it gets a bonus for mills, a statue, a plateau, whatever. The other way is I can just click on it and place it, and I can just kind of see. I can move it around and it shows me the
And see the
points that it
bonus
gets in
numbers.
the
Yeah.
different positions. And
Mm.
now, granted, I could do that in my head, right? But this opens up the whole other level of just like a chill player, right? I don't necessarily even want to look at that stuff. I just want to kind of sandbox it and like see where the highest number is. That's more relaxing way to play for me.
Yeah.
Like when I find that 8, I'm like, oh, okay, this is a good spot.
And you
And it
don't
just
you
makes
don't
the
have
game
a
easier to play on my brain.
you don't have a time limit in this game either, do you?
No, not at all,
That
which I
that would be
love.
something if you were getting there and saying, "Well, I wanted to make a game that's a bit more sort of fast-paced or intense or have people on the edge of their seat." You might put a timer in there and have it being like tick tock, tick tock. So then you're sitting there saying, "Ooh," um, which is a little bit of a week or two ago when we were playing Mini Metro. There was not a timer, but there's that pressure of build up, like
Right.
the passengers at the station, and you've got this kind of time's running out, time's running out. So that game is infinitely less relaxing than this game because you're sitting there
Yeah.
saying, "Oh my, I need a train here and a train there, and oh my goodness, and just dodged a bullet there." But the style and the flow, it kind of lures you into thinking it could be relaxing, but then very quickly it's
Right.
about it's a quick puzzle game, whereas this is a slow puzzle game.
Exactly. Overcooked did that too. It has I was like, "Oh, this would be a relaxing cooking game," and then, oh my god, it's chaos and I hate it, and it gave me so much
Yeah.
anxiety. But yeah, like this game clearly it's got its design principles in order, right? It is very much about de-stressing. There's a lot of games that thrive by adding kind of stress and stressors, which is good because it makes for an engaging game, right? Especially like a competitive multiplayer game. You want stress in those games. Like that
Yeah.
makes you feel better when you pull off the win. But a game like this is clearly they made all of the decisions around de-stressing, right? No timer. They
Mhm.
made the point value super easy to understand. They got lots of relaxing visuals. The music is calm and serene. There's all these different like types of things that are just all around de-stressing, which is a really cool kind of emotion to go for when you're designing a game.
I've got a different sort of game to show, Tim, that is not peaceful and relaxing. It's actually
Ooh.
a little bit more intense. If anyone has any questions about Islanders that Tim's showing off at the moment, throw them in the chat, and I'll start having a look at my game that I've queued up that I think has a lot of ingenuity within it, and it's. I'll throw you the screen so you can see what I'm talking about. It's Creeper. Whoops, where's my thing gone? Every time I clock, there we go. It's Creeper World 3. And there's obviously Creeper World 1 and 2. There's now Creeper World 4, which is made as more of a 3D game. Which, I'm not reviewing that one. I'm reviewing this one because I think the innovation came earlier and the ingenuity came earlier. But I like this game a lot. Why is it ingenious? So let me take you through that process. I've got a little quick intro level to look at first, and then we'll have a look at more of a um, one with more bells and whistles on it as a level. So it's a tower defense game, but it's a tower defense game where the enemy is liquid. And I'll just unpause it. I might die through this playthrough, but just showing you, you've got these little enemy, what are they called? Spawning creator things. And it's pooping out liquid, and that liquid is rising, and you have to build a base and destroy these things. And you can see down in the bottom right down here, it might be a little bit hard to see on the screen. Apologies. Oh, we're over the top of it. Tim, could you pop us out of the way for a sec? Down in the bottom right here, you can see that we've got um, a meter. It's pretty small on the screen, but as I mouse over different areas, you can see the depth of the world. And here there's it's one height in depth, and you can see that the liquid is already filling up like 5 or 6 heights of it. And this over here is quite high. It's a 6 or 7 depth. So basically, you want to build on the higher ground, and as the liquid gets pooped out, it's going to be raising up. I don't know if pooped out is the right word. So you've got your typical kind of controls. I'm going to put down a command center that starts it all off, and then you can build structures. So again, the ingenuity here is not there's some resources I've got to run over and harvest them, or I'm just going to get things every time I kill something. The collectors are basically harvesting the space on the world. So when I put these down, you can see again, there's so many bits of wow, that's really cool. My base is producing these bits of what's the resource called? Energy. So it's spending energy to build these things. And as I've put down my collectors, now at the top, again, this is all pretty small in the hard. Apologies for that. It says 25. So that means I've got 25 energy that's being produced each second and that can spend. It's capped at 25 because, sorry, wrong way around. It's 2.4 energy that's being produced per second, and I filled it up to 25. So if I go and build a few things here, build, 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 then it's going to be spending for a while. And you can see up here now it's minus something that it's spending per cycle. But it has to send these bits of energy out to this next thing. And then when that next thing's done, it says, oh, okay, I now recognize there's a new thing to be built. So I send these bits of energy out to that. So there's this really visual, it's very transparent what's being built and how fast it's being built. If I go and build things in multiple directions, then it can shoot it out a whole bunch of different directions. And then that's really going to put a lot of taxation, or it's really going to tax my energy production, and it's probably going to get to the point where I start to not have enough energy. I go in a little bit of energy deficit. So I'll show you the weapons. On this level, it's an intro level. I've only got cannons. So the idea is you're putting down weapons, and these weapons just here are going to shoot what do we call it? The creep, I guess it's called. I'm going to shoot the creep. and then it's going to push it back. And then the goal is to push it back so far that I can get in and use one of my nullifiers to destroy the thing that's generating all of this liquid, so all of this stuff. And so you can see here, because I'm on a higher level, this row just here's a slightly higher level than down there. The liquid hasn't quite reached me, but when it fills up this entire pool, then the liquid dynamics is going to be such that it comes up to this high level. So basically, it's tower defense, but without the usual path, without the usual kind of grid based. I'm going to make the enemies flow in a particular direction. It's a lot more just open and diverse. There's a vulnerability to my objects if I try and build a structure like too close to the creep. Well, let me put it down here. I don't even have to build a path. I'll just put it here. And any second now, the creep's going to reach that. And because as soon as it touches any of these things, like kaboom, it destroys it. So, that's the threat. So I'm going to just jump out of this one and show you the more advanced, one of the more advanced levels.
This is a really cool concept, though. Like it takes an existing genre and it kind of puts a tweak on it, which completely changes the gameplay and the objectives and all that stuff.
I think it's this one here. Yeah, I think it's genius, and it's really compelling, really interesting, and I mean, this world I'll show you now is so difficult when you first start playing it. So I love the balance of challenge. Here it's just giving you a little bit of a mission, like destroy these things before something happens. Basically, on this level, I'm just trying to stay alive. But you can see there's islands which create a whole new dynamic. So the creep can't flow from here to here, from the middle one to the right one. However, I need to be able to get over to that one over there. So it introduces a whole bunch of new abilities. I might just focus for now on this one island. Normally, I would build two islands, the bottom right and the top left. However, if I'm trying to manage two and talk and stuff, I'm going to die pretty quick. Well, you know what? Let's come on, Rick, push the limits. So I'm going to unpause. I love being able to pause and speed up, but they're standard in these sorts of games. That's a given. Let me zoom in a little bit here. So I need to quickly build my collectors, and you can see that this command center has a different energy usage than the one up in the top left. So I'm building them independently. It's introduced a little bit of the multiple things. There's a little bit of you can harvest this thing. That's one of the rare sort of in the world things. And the other rare harvesting in the world thing is this ore. So I can build myself an ore mine, chuck it over the top of that, and I'll show you what happens in a moment after I've done that. Ore mine. But obviously you have to have things connected in order to power them. You can't just put like weapons in the middle of nowhere. So I'm going to grab a weapon. I'll put a cannon down here just to start shooting that one back. And it costs energy to make your weapon shoot. So there's this real balance between, how much energy do I have? How much do I need? Do I build more power collecting stuff? Do I build more weapons? And, oh, crud, I'm not paying attention. So the creep got there more quickly than I could build. But now I'm harvesting ore. I can build a sprayer. I'll put it just here. I'll put another one just there. Hopefully I don't think I'm going to be able to get to it. Put on a higher level before it gets to me. Build those sprayers and I'll show you how they work. Maybe I'll just focus on this one island down here and just let that one up there go to death for the purpose of our demonstration here. I can zoom in a little bit closer as well if we're down here. But I mean, you can see the ingenuity here is mostly of this liquid, and that would have required a little bit of tricky programming to figure it out first time, I think. Probably by Creeper World 3 or 4, they've got it figured out. But
doing in 2D too as well. Like that's
so cool.
Yeah.
The thing that we're going to get on this level is asteroid things flying towards me that I need air defense against. So this is where you get the good balance and decisions. I love choice in games and decisions in games. The point I wanted to show here is we've got this blue liquid that you're producing from mining stuff, and the blue liquid fills up the space, whereas our weapons, they just kind of shoot the thing back and harm it a little bit, then it fills it back up again. It destroys it a little bit. This blue stuff becomes a kind of a blockage, I guess, if you will. So I'm not sure exactly the dynamics, but it's more powerful to say I can reclaim this land because I can put my blue goo on it, and then when I've got my blue goo on it, I can push my weapons further down into this space. So yeah, there's the oh no, okay, got a little bit got a bit overconfident there with that one, didn't I? And there's a bunch of other things, usual sort of tower defense progression, not so much click and upgrade type stuff. Although, can you do that? Click and upgrade. No, it's been a while since I've played it. No,
Rick,
you
when
can't.
did this game come out?
Oh goodness, that's a question for the Steam page. I'm not sure. Like years and years ago,
Is this the
I want to
third one?
say 10 years, but it might not be that long
Okay.
ago. 5 years. Um, yeah, look at that. I'm making some bad mistakes over here. But the original Creeper World, ages and ages ago, long time ago.
Interesting.
So it's. I think sometimes this ingenuity can come from just doing a bit of prototyping and having one idea. Hey, what if it's liquid you're trying to push back? And then saying, I'm going to do
Yeah.
standard tower defense mechanisms. You place towers, you have different sort of towers you can put down. I'll put down a mortar just so you can see how that's a bit different. It launches bombs. Um, I can hear a siren or an alarm going. I think whatever this, whatever this objective was, I'm about to fail. Um, but there's also an ingenuity in saying, well, if it's liquid I'm battling, what's my vulnerability? My vulnerability is my network of stuff, and I want that
Right.
network of stuff not just to be here are my frontline weapons and there's the enemy, but to have my entire infrastructure of producing energy be vulnerable to the creep, and then to give situations where I'll probably over here I'm dying hardcore, aren't I? Yeah, my base is about to go. Um, so to have these situations where it flies off. Thanks for nothing. Control center, off you go. Um, it's probably saying the same to me. Thanks for nothing. Thanks for neglecting me. I don't know why this is happening, but it's raining the blue goo, which is kind of helpful. Um, what was I getting at here? Anyway, there's a lot of. I was making a point, and then I got distracted by the game, as happens.
This is an intense game, though. We were just talking about de-stress versus adding stress. This is one of those games that definitely ramps up in the stress category, right? Like, and it does on purpose to like get you more and more invested in the game. The longer you go on, the more stuff to worry about, the more you got to like micromanage stuff, and it's kind of got the opposite of trajectory of something like Islanders. But
Exactly.
you know what's another cool, interesting thing about this? Like at first you look at guns and the guns that shoot like water, and it doesn't really make sense. But if you didn't include guns and you didn't have the affordance of how a tower defense game works, this game would be a lot harder to understand. Like because they use the basics of a tower defense game, and then they said, well, what if we just change enemy to like a water substance? Even though gun shooting water back doesn't really make sense, the second you see it happen, you get it. And that's it.
Yeah.
Like that's a thing. That's what happens. That's how this world works. And so I think that's really, really cool because if they tried to go a step further and they tried to make you do dams or pumps or like other stuff, they might lose some of the simplicity in the gameplay and the simplicity in learning kind of the systems as well. But guns, everybody knows how cannons work, right?
Yeah. And I don't recall the flow of events because it has been a long time ago. And thanks, Marcus, for showing us the dates of these things. 2009 for the first Creeper World, then 2011, 2013. So this game's from 2013, and then 2020. There's a version 4 that's 3D that hasn't really appealed to me. I like there's a charm of this 2D that I like, and have seeing it in 3D. Maybe it's fantastic, but I haven't checked it out yet. Um, One of the things we can learn from this as well is colors. So you can see that all of my network is red, which is showing I'm in energy deficit. I don't have enough energy to be doing the things I want to do, which is shooting and building and expanding. So again, with all good strategy games, you have a decision matrix and you have choices between, okay, do I do lots of building? Do I build all of my energy infrastructure and hope to stay alive long enough to then build some guns? Do I do it
Right.
in balance? I've just put down a new item that I'd like to show you. It's kind of interesting to have a look at, um, if I can remember how to use it. But I've put down some bombers as well. Do I do some things that can fly and destroy things off in the distance? I've also I'm building this Bertha, which is a long range. It just blows out a huge chunk of the creep. So you've got these choices, which is super important in a game. So I'm not sitting there saying, well, obviously there's one way to do this. I build a thing, then I build another thing, then I do a thing and another thing. That's a bad game if it's obvious what to do, I feel. Let me see if I can get these bombers doing some
Yeah.
bombing before I.
Strategy games can never have one right answer. I think that's bad design.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. Maybe my guys weren't filled up with any stuff yet. That could be it. So I mean, this is really neat as well. The When you look at the volume here, you can see these kind of lines on the creep. It's showing you that at the point where it's being produced, it's much higher. So it's not. It's thicker. If you think of the liquid as it's thicker, it flows a little bit more slowly. So you do get these high peaks right over here. There's kind of six heights of creep that's then flowing out into all the flat areas. And so my idea with these bombers was to get in there and bomb right in the middle of it. I think he might have enough bomb juice to go do some of that. Um, yeah. And then that's going to put a nice big dent in that. Because there's a dent in that, it's going to slow up the production in the outside. So if you can kill vertically, if you can kill like, 4 or 5 or 6 layers of creep, that's better than out here on the fringes where each time I bomb something, it's only killing one layer. So I think your impact is going to be in a sphere. So if it's only one layer thick, you're not being as efficient in that sphere as if you're getting
Right.
it in a thick area. Does that make sense?
It does, but this adds a whole level of strategy I've never even thought about. And I played so many tower defense games. Like it's that one change makes it drastically different to
Yeah.
where it's totally something that's unique and ingenuitive.
And then you can add a whole bunch of other features. Once you've got your core game, then you can add a little bit of that scope. So I can get there, and I've got this item here which allows me to terraform. If I click the terraform button, and then I choose the height that I want. So maybe I can make a little wall if that's of interest to me. So I can push the height up to say 5. I forget how to uh, left mouse to add, right mouse to remove, Shift T to select the terrain under the height. So if I go Shift T, is it Shift T? Yeah, I think so. Shift T. No, that doesn't make sense. Shift. Oh, it helps if I actually hit T. There you go. So I can see what height things are, and I can say I want to build this up a little bit. I can make it a little bit smaller, so I can build myself a higher wall. It gives me the number, so I can see. Okay, these are sixes around here. So if you wanted to go that sort of strategy, this again is taking energy, but I can go and build myself a little wall just along here. You can't build a wall on the creep, but I could build a wall there as well. And if I build that wall, then all this stuff around the back here is going to be safe, hopefully, if my thing actually reaches, which I think it is. Yeah. So
This game,
that for me is one of those things where you wouldn't build that from the start. You wouldn't have this terraforming thing right from the get go. You'd have your liquid, and you'd have your battle, and might have your bombers about to die. And then at some point, you'd say, you know what is cool? It'd be cool if you could raise and lower the terrain. I'm going to put that in there. So this is a classic example of that. The save it for the sequel. I don't know if you've ever used that terminology, Tim,
yeah.
but save it for the sequel. This is version number 3, and it's got these cool things in it. So, um, yeah, it's clearly you can add more and more things over time. These
This
bombers are
game
a bit,
seems so complex to make in 2D. It
yeah,
just seems really like, oh my god, like talk about
and
engineering, ingenuitive, like
engine, yeah. But it's
man.
there's a real like you saw that first level. It's pretty simple. It grows. It does a really good job of growing in the complexity. This looks like it's crazy out of control, but once you learn the system
Yeah,
of here's how I collect my energy, all these things are just sort of visual noise. I've gone and put down reactors which produce energy, but they don't need the land mass, so they're kind of a more expensive,
right.
smaller reactor thing. Whereas these other collectors, they collect from the larger space. But you learn those things slowly. The game rolls it out to you, which is that's not the part of ingenuity. I don't think that's standard good game design, but it gets to the point where you do have all of these things going on eventually. And we haven't even looked at these little weird critter things. They're spiders running along. You need to have a different weapon to kill those because obviously they're not creep that you can blow up. You need to have snipers. They shoot the spiders. The spiders can only run along this kind of network. So again, strategy. There's the strategy of how do I go from this island to that island. So there's lots going on in here. But overall, I think it's a really great example of find one thing that you can innovate on, and then that can really open up a
Yeah.
lot of possibility in your game. Take a standard genre, tower defense, change one aspect of it, and then all of a sudden you've got what feels like a whole new genre in a way.
Yeah. And like you said, you always say turn it up to 11 too, right? Like it's not just replacing enemies with liquid. It's like taking that idea all the way to the end. Like, what would that really be like? Would you push it back with cannons? Would you build walls? Would you have stuff take over? Like they pushed it all the way to kind of where it was, and a lot of other ingenuity and innovation comes out of that by pushing an idea all the way to the end, right? Marcus says it's almost a bushfire fighting sim. Something like this fighting fire would actually be really cool.
Mm, yeah, I agree. I'm just trying to see if there's anything else nifty I should show you guys while we're here before we move on. I've made my little wall over that side, which is nice. Like this all should be pretty safe now. I can just chill out. You can move your things, so I can make this fly over there, which it took me a long time before I accidentally discovered that. But you can create your front line, and then you can move a whole bunch of your weapons, so you can slowly push things back. So then it becomes a little bit of an RTS in a way. Okay, we failed. I knew I was going to fail on that. Don't worry about it. That was just these guys taking off. Wasn't trying to do that. So then there's a little bit of, like I say, it feels a little bit RTS because I need to get all my
Right.
things and push them forward a little bit and push them forward. So um, again, you don't need to be defined by your genre. You can be defined by what feels good in your game, I
Yeah.
think.
But I mean, that specifically is a really good example, though, of like they recognize that this game needed that, right? Like, if you couldn't
Mm.
move your units, building a front line like that doesn't make a whole lot of sense because once they fight off that front line, you have to move forward. So you'd have to keep building new units, and then the units behind those units would just be useless. So it's a really cool feature that they kind of followed the game design to get to, and I think a lot of people need to follow their ideas and their game designs down to the end point of where they need to be.
There's something that speeds up the flow of your energy, but I can't for the life of me remember how to do that. So if anyone's played this game and you can remember how do you go about speeding up your energy flow? Okay, something else is happening. Uh-oh, looks like I need more missile defense. Um, this is the classic, Tim, when you and I play these games and review them. I'm just like, I want to play this game. I want to win this level now. What else can I
Yeah,
do? This is fun. So I need to make sure that we're still staying on target here. But for the
yeah,
life of me, I can't figure out how to, because the energy is all going really slow. But you can speed it up, I think, or maybe it's just not on this level. Like maybe I don't have that ability or that object or that whatever. Um,
yeah. But I mean, I think we've kind of seen the core concept of the game, and we understand kind of how it works and why it's ingenuitive. If anybody has any kind of questions on this or Islanders or any kind of questions related to your games that how to apply some of this ingenuity, we'd love to answer them. So just ask them in the chat.
yep,
Dave
all
says this
good.
level is actually 3D with an overhead camera. Is that like that's a fact? Like
Oh,
that, or you think that?
yeah.
This looks
The
2D. This looks just engineered
Yeah, this
because
is
it's got a
2D.
flat perspective.
These are sprites. That This is not this particular. Maybe Dave's talking about the Creeper World 4, but I don't believe this one is 3D. I think it's all sprites. You can just tell by the way these turrets are moving and whatnot.
Yeah,
Yes. BB Game Dev. Would be cool to hear analysis of some current AAA games too, or some great classic games. I like the idea of classic games. I'm a little bit more hesitant about AAA games because a lot of it is, wow, look, this took 50 people a year to do. And there's a usefulness in that. But I think it's also a little bit like um, it it's not. I don't think it's good for indie developers to compare themselves to AAA games because we
yeah.
might say, okay, look at this great game design, Red Dead Revolver 2. Look what they've done. They've got
Red Dead
this with
Redemption.
that, with that, with that, with this. But then what do we take out of that as an indie game developer to say, well, you can do it that way, but you'll have to do it with one thing instead of seven things. It feels a little bit more hollow. So
Also, I think a lot of AAA games are on the path of thing that reaches the most amount of people all the time, and so a lot of their design practices end up with this kind of like, especially if you look at like some of the Ubisoft games, you don't need 80 hours of content and ultimate quests and end game stuff and stuff for after the campaign ends and these quests and that stuff. Like, there's a lot of stuff that we can learn for sure, but there's also a lot of stuff that just it's unnecessary to try to go there. And if you try to emulate a AAA design, it's a good way fall on your face rather than what we're talking about today, which is ingenuity. How do you use an idea or a concept and be able to make something really interesting? That's why people want to play it versus like really big or really a lot of content. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I think that the point has evolved in chat into maybe really popular indie games, which is cool as well. I'm down with that to look at games that are a bit bigger, more popular. Some of the ones we've been showing recently are ones that have stood out to us as having a little bit of innovation. Yeah.
Yeah. I will say that a lot of people tend to look at successful games because they think that if those games have something that other games didn't do. But a lot of times, success can have a lot to do with luck or timing or who you know
Mm,
or money behind it or whatever. And so I think when we're talking about pure design, it's important to pull from a lot of sources, some successful, some not successful. Just because a game wasn't successful doesn't mean that it has bad game design.
mm,
It's sometimes our brain likes to think those two things are connected, but they're not always connected either. So it's just important to kind of think about that
yeah.
bias as well.
I'm interested to know, people who are live watching at the moment, where you feel your game design skill is. So, I think for Tim and I, being old fellas who have been around for a while trying to make indie games, that there's a little bit of the technical challenge. Or, how do I actually build this thing? How do I actually make the art? But then there's the massive challenge of how do I make this compelling? How do I make it stand out? What do I do from level 2 to 3? How do I have players continue to want to play this game after the first 5 minutes, after the first half an hour, after the first 1 hour? And so that whole design conversation is it's so creative and artistic in a way. There's no formula or recipe that you can say, well, just do this, then that, and your game will be amazing and popular and successful. It's constantly distilling down the if then situations. So if you've got a game like this, then you can do that, and if you do this, then it feels like that. And I know it's not a very effective teaching philosophy, but you get to the point where you just kind of intuitively know what feels good and what's going to work. And that comes from just, lots and lots and lots of playing games and studying games and analyzing games. Then eventually you start to get that feeling of, you know what? I see over and over this visual language where green is good and red is bad, and that seems to make sense. And this one game where they flipped it the other way around, where green is bad and red is good, that was amazing because I was expecting it to be this, but then it was actually that. So you start to see these patterns, and then you start to break the patterns, then you start to join the patterns. And so, my general open question is in terms of where you guys feel you're at with all of that, whether you think you need more of that, although most people are going to say yes, probably. But where would you say you are on that continuum, just so we can gauge what we're talking about? Should we be talking more simple? Should we be talking more complex? Should we not be talking about game design at all, etc.?
Yeah. Yeah, while we're waiting for the answers to that question, one of the things I do want to bring up is there's this book called Thinker Toys, which I think my camera's backwards, so you'll be
Yeah.
able to read it backwards. But I've had this book for several years and I use it as a reference for all kinds of stuff because this is a giant book about methods to generate creativity. And
Mm,
it's just filled with all these different methods on how you can combine or adapt or change things or think things through in a different way. And it's really like a reference book. And this thing is it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. Like whenever you're stuck for any kind of ideas or anything like that, you can look through this book, you can find a method and you can generate all kinds of ideas. And it's really, really, really solid. So I would recommend anybody that's looking for that kind of thing to pick up that book. It's called Thinker Toys, and I have a second
Thinker
edition.
Toys. Great, nice tip. Thank you, Tim. Thinker Toys. Um, Not seeing a lot of conversation about design and design in general. So, which is cool. I mean, we'll keep pushing out there with design and trying to give you guys inspiration for how you can make your game more compelling. We keep coming back to the same sort of mechanisms. Find one interesting thing about your game and build your game around that. So, for example, Creeper World, it's got the flow of the liquid. That's interesting, and that would have taken a while to figure out, prototype, get the tech behind it. But then once that was in place, it's like, great, now I can build all of my game around this one interesting aspect for the game. Um, and so, this is a good point in here from Nacho and Hot Dog. My game always ends up boring. I don't know what to add to it to make it juicy. Is that design related? Tim, or you're reading stuff?
Add juicy. I'm creating a poll.
Okay, cool. So, well,
How to make your
I
game
mean,
more
have a go at that.
juicy?
If your game always ends up boring, then wow, yes, that absolutely is game design. I mean, that's the design is all about making a compelling experience. So, absolutely yes. If you're having that issue of it being boring, then yeah, game design. First of all, that's part of it. Second, it's um, how do you dissect why a game is boring? The first part for me is always what meaningful decisions are you asking your player to make? The most boring games are the ones where you don't have anything to do that you care about. So that would be something if you find that your game's not compelling or it's boring, go back and say, okay, how can I introduce decisions at every step of the process? Not just you run around and you shoot enemies, because after you do that for a minute, that's kind of boring. And oh, maybe I need to go and make 20 different enemy types. That might not solve it. It might just be the same sort of boring. So
Yeah,
straight away give the player limited ammunition and have 100 more enemies in the level and see if it goes from being boring to being some other different emotion. And if it's a puzzle game, have it so that there's multiple ways to solve it, or there's multiple things you're moving around instead of just one. You just have to slide the thing from there to there and it opens the door. Maybe have it that if you slide it the other way, it gives you coins, or if you slide it some other
yeah,
way, it does something else. So that's one mechanism. Just a really quick throwing it out there is go through the bits of your game and say what are the decisions the player's making and how can I add more decisions. And whenever you have a decision moment, 2 to 5 decisions between two. So one thing is not a decision. Hey Tim, should we go do that? Okay, well that's a yes. That's not a decision. I have to go do that. Shall we go do that, or go do this, or go do that? Now you've got 3 things to choose between. So 2 to 5. Once you get above 5, it starts to become, well, I don't care. There's too many things to select between. I can't analyze the right thing to do. I'll just do something randomly.
yeah. And to just riff off of what Rick said, he did say decisions, not content. I think it's pretty common for people to be like, "Oh, well, I made like a first person shooter controller, and it's gonna be fun. I just need to add more stuff. I just need more rooms. I just need more, like you said, more enemies. I just need more stuff." And generally, that's always a bad idea. Like if it's not fun with minimal content, it's not gonna be fun with maximal content, even if your brain thinks it is. Like, and that's one of those things we talked about. That's kind of a AAA approach. Is that is kind of their approach. Like, let's add more stuff to it, which is not
Mm.
something that's really sustainable for an indie either. Like, even if that is the case, a content machine is not easy to build as a 1 or 2 or 3 person team, right? Content takes a lot of time. So, being
Yeah.
ingenuitive with what you have and being resourceful and kind of learning, that's why procedural generation is so big right now, right? Because it takes a little bit of content and stretches it a long way, which is really, really cool.
Yeah. And that is, I mean, that's what it means to be indie and to have ingenuity is to say, how do I've got 3 months to make this game and I've got this massive idea in my head. How do I get 80% of the goodness I'm trying to get out of this game in the 3 months, as opposed to the 5 years it would take to make the big massive monster of a game. So this is where the cleverness comes in. And so maybe Tim, we can just brainstorm and bomb some of those ideas how indie game developers can show ingenuity to get things made with the limited resources that we have by being indie. The first one
Yeah.
for me I mentioned already is reusing assets. That can be finding an asset pack and then tweaking them a little bit. It can be making one model and then saying, cool, my game's just going to have one enemy, but I'm going to make it 50 different colors. And the game is going to be about, okay, that enemy is mauve and that one is lavender and that one is purple. Okay, which one of them do I shoot? Because I don't want to shoot the one that, whatever. You can really turn that into a feature of your game by deliberately saying everyone looks the same but a slightly different color.
Right.
Because recoloring something takes 2 seconds, but creating the new model and the new animation and the new rig takes a long time. So reuse, 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 and asset packs, asset packs, asset packs.
Yeah, and I would say procedural generation is one of them. That's a huge one for that, but that's a whole other topic on itself. So I'm going to skip past that, and I'm going to say that there's you can cleverly limit the amount of systems that you have. So you're not, you can, okay, how do I phrase this? You can add more decisions, like Rick said, in existing systems versus add new systems. So again, like we talked about, a lot of people like say, "Oh, if I just add more stuff, if I just add a fire system, if I just add a buddy system or whatever," like they want to add new systems to it because they think that'll make the game fun. But generally, reducing the amount of systems and increasing the depth of the existing systems is how you make more interesting games. So, for example, in Battleborn, my game, Battleborn Tactics, I've got a system where all of the enemies in the game can be captured to your team to use on your team. It's like a turn based tactics game. So by doing that, I don't have to make players and enemies. I just make units, right? And the units then create a bunch of gameplay for the player because they can play as all the units, or they also create a bunch of gameplay because they can play against all those units, and all those units are kind of unique. So by doing that, I saved a lot of time off of my player creation and my enemy creation and all that stuff because I'm just creating units that are on different teams. So it's kind of a
Mm,
clever way to use existing content, making more content, kind of multiplicative, right? Like every unit kind of has three uses at that point. So yeah, that kind of stuff is just thinking outside the box.
yeah. I think the other thing that I like is solving problems with tuning, not with features. So if we look at a tower defense game, you might get there and say, okay, I need to have. So you've got just basic enemies coming on a path, and I've got towers. Cool. There's the game right in there. You could say, okay, how do I make this game better, more interesting, more compelling? I could have a totally different enemy type that that flies. But to do that, I'm going to have to change this and that, add one of these, and da 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 da. Or you can get there and say, okay, just leave the current enemies that I've got, but I'll have some that are slow and some that are fast. That's really easy to do. Some that are big, some that are small, some that require a lot of shots but move very slow, some that are really fast. So that for me is a tuning. It's the balance, and it's tweaking some numbers and some variables. So usually tuning for me means tweak some numbers and change some aspects of the configuration of it. Whereas a feature is you have to get there and say, okay, what code do I need to make this work? You have to start from scratch on something. And so I
Right.
think a lot of the temptation is to add more stuff. Okay, I need a leaderboard. I need a high score system. I need multiplayer. I need you know questing. I need crafting. There's so many features you can implement, but they all take time. And if your game can't stand on the one or two features you've got already, then you might have scoped it out or designed it in a way that's not an indie thinking way of doing it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. Um, Jorge was saying, I struggle with how the game should start, player placement, or I should waste time on like a cinematic intro. I think that's a it's a good example of like just adding more stuff. Like a cinematic intro is probably definitely one of those things that's, if it happens at all, it's way down the line.
Yeah,
Um, I think one of the best ways to figure out whether your game is interesting enough is just by putting it in front of people. Just straight up put it in front of people, no context, don't help them. Have them record themselves play the game if you can, and just watch them play it. Like if they can give you a stream of consciousness on what they're thinking out loud while they're playing it, even better. But just watching somebody play will tell you whether they're interested, whether they're not interested, whether they check their phone over and over while they're doing it. You know, like what points did they lose interest, what they click on, what they got confused about. Like it's the best kind of feedback, and I highly recommend it. Rather than be in your own head, because I know what that's like when you're sitting and you're programming and you're thinking about making your game. It's really easy to get lost in, oh, like where does the player start? Should they start over there? Should they start over there? Should they start? But like those kind of questions ultimately don't matter, and there are things that you can just pick one and then test it and see if people even care or they like that at all. Um,
yeah. I think
yeah,
ingenious games are ones that don't require you to tell the player how to play it. You just know. And you can do that by having by starting off having it, as you've said, I think a couple of times today, Tim, having it be obvious because it's things that we've seen before. And you can assume that someone playing your game has played games before. And if they're
yeah,
playing your game genre, you can assume they've played that game genre before. I think we can just assume that. And there might be, I don't know, 1 in 1,000 people who come along and like, oh, I've never seen a tower defense before. They're like, cool, well, you might struggle a little bit, but here's YouTube or here's our
Yeah.
website. Go there, you go. We don't need to go and put in a tutorial for the one random person who doesn't know how to play tower defense games. So then you've got enemies and you've got to put things down and embrace the joy of discovery that players have by figuring out how to play a game. I think there's a joy in that. But the cleverness there is you need to give them just a couple of things at the start, which is what
Yeah.
Creeper World does really well. Here's the collectors and here's the cannon. That's it. There you go. And just figure out what to do with it. I'm not going to tell you exactly how. Just go figure it out. So you place it down.
Yeah.
Oh, it kind of does that. Oh, it does this and one of those. And then as you introduce more things, and depending upon what sort of game you got, you can introduce them more quickly or more slowly. But if you need to have a whole tutorial series, that takes a lot of time and it's a real pain to
Yeah.
create. And you know, yeah, try to be clever in making a game that doesn't require a tutorial and doesn't
Right.
require a cinematic sequence at the start.
Yeah.
And the other rant I'll have on that, Tim, is people don't when you very first show the game, if you've got a cinematic, I don't know the characters, I don't know the world, I don't care at all about those things yet because I haven't gone and invested in it yet. I haven't gone and fought the dragon and defeated the dragon in order to have a relationship with the dragon is gone. And if you have the start of the game, it's like a famous knight killed the dragon, everyone was really happy, and you should be happy. Well, I don't care. It wasn't me. So I think cinematics are much better to have later, in my opinion, not at the start.
Yeah. Just to just bump back real quick, you were talking about how um, you having design and affordances in your game that people can bring in with knowledge outside of the game, super important. A big way to make your game easily playable too is the transparency of the design. So in Islanders, for example, when I hover over the mouse with the buildings, they light up, and they pop out, and that says, oh, I can click on them. I click on them, then I've got the building that follows my mouse, right, and it turns red where I can't place it. So that says, oh, I can't place it there. And the places I can place it, it pops up a little score and it's got a number and it says you get 13 for placing it here, but you get 18 for placing it there. That's stuff that when you're playing the game, it doesn't even register as like good design, right? You're just like, oh, this is how it works. But when you're building it, you have to actually add all that stuff in. And that stuff is super transparent design on what's going to happen when I do the next action, which is the click, right? So I know what's going to happen now. That makes it more intuitive to play because if you think of like a baby playing with like the blocks with the different shapes and stuff, like the way that they figure that out is just kind of trial and error, right? They see, oh, it fits in there, it doesn't fit in there, whatever. Like it's the same kind of deal with any kind of video game. So just thinking through the transparent design and being super upfront about what this action is going to do, right? And strategy games are notoriously bad at that. Like when they say, would you like to attack this enemy or do this, like what does that mean? Am I going to start war with that empire? Is it going to affect my food trade? Like, so just kind of listing that stuff out and being transparent on what that action is going to mean, is it goes a long way.
So, question from Lottie asking, do you have any insight on making just walking around feel good? I played one game where you feel like a god running around, and one where I accidentally run off a cliff every 3 seconds. I assume the second one is not good and the first one is good. I mean, the best thing of all these, how should I do it, is try it and see how it feels yourself, and show it to other people and see how it feels. You might say, well, okay, I've done that, but it's not really producing any results. I would say then look to again to tuning and go extreme. So if your character runs around at speed 5, see what happens when you run around at speed 30. And it might break your animations, it might look a little bit hokey, but by doing that, you might say, you know what, it's really fun to go really fast. And then have it so there's a lot of obstacles in the world. When you touch the obstacles, you explode. So then the battle becomes going really fast and trying to, it's like driving a Formula One car. You're running around and you're trying to dodge everything and get out of the way. And see if that speaks to what your game is trying to achieve. That's one way of doing things. The other way of doing things is, again, back to decisions. So if you're running around, what does it matter? Like, what's the consequence of running around in a particular way? What's the decision and the choice and the consequences? And I've got a third way popped in my head is have your character be compelling just because of the character. And a few weeks ago we were looking at Goat Simulator. It's a goat. That's awesome. like just running around as a goat. And you could very easily swap in a humanoid character, and it would be exactly the same game, exact same speed, exact same everything else, jump and stuff, but it would be a human, and you'd be like, well, this is kind of boring. I'm just running around in the world, doesn't make sense. But the moment it's a goat, it's compelling, it's fun because it's kind of done his little, trop as it runs along and jumping. So it doesn't always have to be an animal. Like there's plenty of animal games out there now that Stray is doing well. You run around as a stray cat. That's doing quite well. But it could be you just the way you run around as a human's different. Maybe you hop instead of run. Maybe you
Yeah.
glide. Maybe you skip. Is there a joy in having playing as a young child, and the run animation is actually a skip, and you're like, it's kind of fun skipping around and add a little bit of bounce to it. So sometimes, how do you make run feel good? Sometimes you need to just solve it with animation, and sometimes you can solve it with a different character. Sometimes you can solve it with decisions. But
Yeah.
don't be safe. Don't be safe with how you go about doing it. Try extremities, try extremes, and see how it feels.
Yeah. There's a lot to what Rick said. I know he said it kind of in a very elegant way, but like there's a lot to animation. There's a lot to tweaking variables. There's a lot to like the weight of your movement system, right? So like in Dark Souls, swinging a sword has like this heft to it, right? Where like in Hollow Knight, it's like ding, 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 Um,
Mm.
so much goes into that, but you have to build a system that has a series of variables that you can tweak over and over again. And I 100% would agree with what he said of going to extremes. Sid Meier's used to say back in the day, he's the creator of Civilization and all those games. If you're ever going to tweak a variable, you should double it or have it first, just because tweaking it by point
Yeah.
one, it doesn't do
He was
much.
also talking about that as an upgrade, as a if the player picks up a thing or gets a bonus and it's an extra 5%, they're gonna be like, who cares? But
Right.
if it doubles, then you get that's meaningful. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing you can do too is you can totally analyze similar games because the genre is heavily dependent on kind of how your movement feels too. I made a platformer that controller for that person was very difficult to create. Like it took a lot of tweaking over a lot of time. Rick and I did a course with a platformer in it too, and that I just gave a bunch of numbers in the course because I was like, we can't sit here and tweak these numbers for 7 hours.
What about a 7? What about a 9? What about a
Yeah,
12? I
yeah,
found it 6.2. That's the best. you
yeah,
know. But then, Tim, there's a question. I think back what I was talking about before, where at some point you just intuitively you know these things because you've looked at it enough and you've felt it and played it.
yeah,
Some people I find haven't got to that point yet where they can't just say, okay, 6.2 feels really good. And so I think there's the long path for those folks. If that's you, the long path is play a lot of games in your genre and get a feel of what's good. You're not trying to steal ideas. You're trying to intuitively get, you know what?
yeah.
It's good when it has this kind of bounce to it. It's bad when it has that kind of thing to it. So get that intuition. Um, I think that's a key way of doing it. What was my other point in terms of how you discover this? No, I forgot my other point. Getting old.
Well, one of the things you don't want to do too is you don't want to tweak it in a vacuum because, especially movement systems, if you're sitting by yourself week in and week out, like tweaking this movement system, you're going to get used to the speed. And then the speed's going to feel slow and you're going to want to tweak it again and make it faster. And then 2 weeks later, it's going to feel slow again and you're going to tweak it. And so you got to involve other people in the process too, because I've literally made the mistake where I'm just like, after 3 months of working on it, I just made it really fast because like that's how I wanted to play. But I hand it to people and they're like, "What is going on here? Like, why is this character so fast? I can't even see what's going
Yeah.
on." And like it felt natural to me, but the feeling natural isn't a constant. It changes
Mm,
what you're used to, right? So that's why games kind of ramp up in difficulty over time and all that stuff because
yeah.
we get better at kind of dealing with whatever is in front of us.
And I think the other thing to be really mindful of is that it's about having all these things support your player experience. So if you want the player to feel rushed or frantic or out of control, then you get there and you make a decision with your, say, your run. Okay, I'm going to make it really quick. Does that meet the need of feeling rushed and out of control? And then that becomes very easy to quantify. You can ask people, how do you feel when you play? Or you can say to them, do you feel like you're out of control or do you feel like you're in control? And if they say, no, it's easy. And you're like, cool, I guess I better double it again then. And then like, wait, this is getting a little bit too, crazy. Like, great, that's what I was going for. So if you don't know what you're going for, you don't know whether 6 is better than 12 is better than 8. But if you know what you're going for, then it becomes less subjective, less my intuition says this is good, and more scientific in terms of, am I achieving the thing I'm trying to achieve?
100% agreed.
Cool. So, hey, Tim, let's take one or two last questions before we wrap it up, I think. So, if you've got any last questions you want to throw away, it could be anything, courses or studying or learning or game development or game design, then throw it to us. Tim and I, well, I'll speak for me. We always love hanging out with you guys and answering
Yeah,
questions
I
and
don't.
hopefully getting you unstuck and keeping you driving along in your indie game development journey.
Games are fun. They're hard to make. Okay, they are. They're very hard to make, but they're fun to make, and it's really cool to see a community of people making wonderful games.
The question, BB Game Dev, where is Rick's background from? I assume I'm allowed to use it. I'm a little bit hesitant to tell you where it's from because, well, I think it's public domain. It's from a game that starts with W and rhymes with mitness, but I didn't tell you exactly what it was. I just think it looks cool. I like it because I don't know, it's a video gamey and it's pleasant and happy. Um, but yes,
My background doesn't look cool.
your
I
background's
put a lot of
awesome as
work
well.
into my background. It's
No,
not
it's
it's not done yet. I
not all
got a lot
about
of
you,
stuff
Tim.
to do.
Not all about you. Just
Are there any new courses coming? No, we're completely done.
all over. Oh, look at you. You've spat the dummy. Like, no one likes my background, so no more courses for you guys. Let's all give Tim some love on his background. I think it looks pretty cool. You know what the
I've got
problem
some
is, though?
lighting and stuff too, and
You
the
need to. I
camera.
was about to say that. You get some lights in there,
Yeah,
and people will be losing their mind over, oh my God, Tim's background. Get some lights
camera's
and some
kind of
of those.
crooked too.
Oh,
Like
you,
it's I
you know what? I
gotta
didn't even notice. You got a whole bunch more skulls going on back there now.
yeah.
Yeah,
I got a
nice.
collection.
The wetness. Yeah, that is it. That's what it's called, the wetness. It's a diving simulator. So yeah, it's a question on AI, deep dive AI, more complicated AI stuff. Yep, we'd love to do that course. We don't have plans at the moment, but yes, it's certainly on the radar. The sickness, it actually is from the sickness. So yes, it is.
Are you down with the
The
sickness?
mitness. Look at you guys. Wow, it's all rolling in now. Love it. Um, okay, hyped on coffee question. Was there an update for the marketing course you guys had mentioned? Is there going to be a sign up on the main course site or Twitter? So some interest in the marketing workshop slash course that we ran 6 months, 9 months ago. 6 months. Time flies, Tim.
I think it's been almost a year. I think it's around this time.
No, it
A year
hasn't.
ago.
Surely not.
Yeah. I think it was August, September ish last year.
Explains why I look so old. All right, cool. Yeah. So we don't have anything on that just yet, but it's a coming. What else we got in here? Okay, one or two last questions. BB Game Dev has been active today. Question: how do you think game development landscape will change with advances in AI like Mid Journey, etc.? Mid Journey or Mind Journey? I don't know what
Mid
Mid Journey.
Journey. Dude, it's gonna change the game, man. First of all, there's a lot of ethical concerns there. Mid Journey synthesizes images from thousands of images on the internet.
Oh, okay.
So
Yep.
is it unique art or is it stealing art from thousands of artists? There's that whole thing. But I will say Midjourney's art is like, I was looking at it. One, they give you exclusive rights to the anything you generate with the AI, which again is a weird thing because you have exclusive rights to it, but it used other images to generate the image. So it's like weird. But that art is good enough to use for like trading card games, right? Like Midjourney's art. I should just show people just so they understand kind of what we're looking at. Mid-Journey generated
Oh, I'm looking at it
images.
now. Yeah, it's pretty rad.
Yeah,
I mean,
like this is insane what AI can actually generate these days.
the challenge is like this is nifty as sort of stuff, but and like you say, trading card game, yes, but I
Yeah,
don't think it's going to change. Well, I don't know. Maybe soon they'll do this with 3D characters as well, and then yeah. You just
I
type.
think this is a huge step forward in kind of AI generated stuff. Like if you I think AIs in the future are going to start to be more of like the workhorses. So it's still going to take designers and developers to kind of build the systems, but once you know that okay, we're going for a gritty like style with a building like this, Midjourney is really good at generating a bunch of concept art for this kind of style, right? So you can totally use it for inspiration tools, you can use it as workhorse tools. Again, there are some ethical, technically legal things that we're going to have to work through. It's just like self-driving cars. If a self-driving car hits somebody, who's responsible, kind of deal. There's some like legal loopholes we're going to have to work through, but this technology is absolutely amazing, and I think it's a big part of the future um, in game dev. I don't know how, but I 100% see it as a big part of um, game development in the future.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's like, how on earth does it do it and make it look that good? It's like mind blown. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, BB Game Dev says not only Mid Journey though, music generators, code generators. Yeah, it's like GitHub Copilot or whatever, right? So GitHub has this AI thing that can help you write code, but
Mm,
the problem with code is that like technically a lot of times there's a best way to do things, right? Like technically when you give it parameters. So some of the stuff it generates is word for word some of the top like packages and stuff like that on GitHub, and it's like, is GitHub stealing people's code? Like how does that work out, man? Like that's
mm,
it's amazing. But we've got a lot of stuff as a society to kind of work through uh
yeah.
how
I think the
to do that.
I think all we can do, change is inevitable, and we shouldn't fear change. We should look to see how we can um, better ourselves through that. And we've talked a lot about intuition and what works and what doesn't. And I think AI can get us so far. AI can do a great job of replicating what's already there. AI can do a great job of saying, a human told me here are the parameters and I'll figure this out. And AI can also do a good job of getting that feedback of, okay, lots of people like A and not B, so I'll do more of A. But there's still, I think, that for many, many years to come, there's still that human intuition of what feels good, what's innovative, what's different, that I think that's where the opportunity will lie, not in the stuff where we join 8 different bits of art together and make something cool. Yeah, so maybe being an artist is going to change how you do it, but you still need to look at it and say, okay, I like that one, not that one. The AI isn't necessarily going to say um, this is the best way of doing it necessarily. Well, who knows? I'm trying to guess here, but I think a lot of it is intuition is still going to be important and necessary, and
Yes.
creativity is still going to be important and necessary.
Yeah. I think
So,
some of the artists of the future might have to learn how to write some of the best AI art prompts, right? Like that might be part of an artist's job in the future, is not so much draw the thing, but understand the words needed to communicate with the machine to get the best results based on whatever parameters are for the job, right? That sort of thing.
mm,
It's definitely going to be a part of it. I don't know how it's going to do it, but the creativity and the design aspect is always going to be a human thing, especially like you look at my game Photophobia. That game like is my heart and soul poured into a game about like all kinds of abuse and the 5 stages of grief and all kinds of like stuff.
yep,
And AI can't generate stuff like that. It can make technically similar looking stuff, but it can't create that kind of stuff.
yeah,
AI still have problems generating a joke, right? Like, or understanding jokes, right? So like that kind of stuff is really hard for AI to do. If you give it a specific task, like generate this image with a bunch of these images, it's good at that. So just kind of understanding where it's good at and where it's not um, is interesting.
yep. Cool, cool. So yeah, good discussion. Maybe that's a good discussion for us to do a bit of research into AI and procedurally generated things and these kind of combinator type tools. Have a conversation about that at some point. Good stuff. I don't see any last questions, so yeah, it's pretty good for today. Tim, what do you
I
reckon?
think so.
All good? Yep.
I think we're good. I think they're sick of us.
Awesome. So thanks everyone for joining us today. As always, lovely to have you here. We'll be back again, same time, Tuesday, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to have a guest next week, and we're going to be talking probably, I know you've got a topic, Tim, but I think we're going to be talking a little bit about Visual scripting next week is going to be something that we dig into, maybe talking about Unity visual scripting. We've talked about Unreal and Blueprint a bunch, but if I can convince our special guest to come along and join us, then we'll be talking about Unity visual scripting and visual scripting in general, I think.
Whoop,
Cool.
whoop.
So, Tim, thanks for hanging out. Lovely talking to you. And thanks everyone for joining us today.
Bye, everybody. Have a good night.